Hello, everybody. Welcome back to 50 Shades of Tay. And today I have a very special guest for this week's episode of my favorite horror movie. He has directed one of my favorite horror comedies, Elvira's Haunted Hills. I have director Sam Irvin here. Sam, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm great. Thank you for having me back on your show.
Well, welcome back.
You can't get rid of me.
Actually, it's crazy because since we did our interview, I don't remember when that was. It was like the beginning of the year, I think. Maybe like February. Let's just say February.
Yeah,
We've gotten to hang out a couple times in real
we
life, and
have.
it's been
Yes,
so nice getting to spend time with you and getting to know you. We got to hang out at Groundlings for their 50th anniversary special with Cassandra. That was such a fun night.
it was. It was such a great night. I love that night.
And then just recently, we went to the Academy Museum and we went to the Midnight Mass screening and podcast recording for her film. That was such a fun night too.
It was great. It was so much fun. And it's really fun bumping into you at these things.
Yeah, it's so nice to get to spend time with you. But today we're here to talk about your favorite horror movie. And Sam, what is your favorite horror movie?
Well, I have a bunch, but there is certainly one that I am obsessed with to the nth degree, and it's called Frankenstein, the True Story. It was a two-part NBC miniseries in 1973, and I was 17 years old when I saw it as a closeted gay monster kid. And this movie freaking blew me away. I was already a huge Frankenstein film fan. I love all the Frankenstein films, and especially Bride of Frankenstein is one of my all-time favorites. Um, but this film, it spoke to me in very unexpected ways. I detected, even then in 1973, even as a closeted gay kid, there was a lot of gay subtext in this movie that just screamed out at me. Now, it went over the heads of a lot of other people, so it is subtle, but boy, I was certain that the filmmakers intended this to be as gay as it could be at that time and get through the censors and everything else. And I have spent my life sort of researching and interviewing everybody that I can find involved with the film. And I found out that, oh, yes, it was very much intentionally sneaking in as much gay subtext as they possibly could. In fact, there were so many gay people involved in the making of the film, they called themselves the Lavender Hill Mob. And they were conspiring to get as much past the censors and the NBC networks and everything as they possibly could for this film. And it aired in late November. It was November 30th and December 1st of 1973. And at that time, I was editing and publishing a fanzine as a teenager called Bizarre. And just a few months later, in 1974, I put the movie on the cover of this issue, number 3 of my fanzine. And you'll notice that this is a postcard size color photo that is glued onto the cover. That's how primitive this is. I couldn't afford color printing like a big wraparound cover or anything, and all the interior is black and white photos and stuff. But I found an ad in Billboard magazine where you could order 1,000 postcards for like $50 or something. And of course, back then, $50 was a lot of money. It took all my allowance, but for several weeks, let me tell you. But I ordered 1,000 postcards, and we had a run of 1,000 issues of this, and it sold out. I mean, it was incredible. I sold it at Cinemabilia in New York and Larry Edmunds in Los Angeles, and there was a cinema bookstore in London and in Australia, and I took little, ads out in other fanzines and fan clubs like the Peter Cushing fan club and Christopher Lee fan club and everything, and and this magazine did really well, and I got my parents as a graduation gift for my when I was graduating from high school to send me to London so I could interview all of my horror idols like Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing and Ingrid Pitt and all the Hammer film people. But I also tracked down as many people as I could find from this film, Frankenstein, the True Story. And I interviewed Jane Seymour and a whole bunch of other people involved. But at any rate, my obsession really kicked off as far back as this, 1974, which is 50 years ago this year. I mean, literally almost this month. This magazine came out in August. So it's been 50 years and a month since my obsession really kicked off. And since then, flash forward about 40 years or so, and Richard Clemenson, who's the editor and publisher of Little Shop of Horrors magazine, which is it started out as a fanzine the same time I was doing my bazaar way back in the 70s, but it's still going strong. He contacted me. He knew we've known each other as pen pals for a million years, and he knew how much I loved Frankenstein, the True Story, and how I had put it on the cover of my fanzine. And he said, there's an artist, Mark Maddox, who loves this movie. He does a lot of our covers. He's dying to paint a cover on Frankenstein, the True Story, and he's been bugging me to do a big magazine article so he can have a reason to do the cover. And he called me and he said, would you want to write about it? And I said, yes, I would. I know so much more now than I did way back then about this whole gay plot. and but you're going to have to give me the whole issue because I've got way too much to talk about. And so he did. And normally the magazine is 100 pages. We even expanded it to 120 pages.
Oh, wow.
Mark Maddox did the most incredible cover, a 3-panel fold-out mural. It's the largest horror magazine cover ever done to this day. And this came out in 2017. And it's just this incredible mural. And I happen to have the original artwork myself in my collection. And it was just this amazing issue that's all devoted to the making of the film. And you can get these on Amazon. It's now been reprinted. It's all sold out and it's reprinted now. You can get it even hardback and paperback on Amazon. It's Little Shop of Horrors number 38. Now, that led to Shout Factory doing a restoration of this movie. It's 3 hours. It was 2 hours each night on 2 consecutive nights, but once you take away all the commercials, it's a 3-hour movie. And Shout Factory did this amazing restoration for 2K of the entire 3-hour version, and they got me to do all of the extras. And Konstantin Nasser produced the extras, and it's an incredible Blu-ray. But also, the film has never looked as good as it did. It wasn't even as beautiful when it broadcast way back then. They didn't have the kind of resolution that you get now on a Blu-ray. And it's just spectacular. It is really, really gorgeous. Mark Maddox, the same artist, did another cover art for this because he's obsessed like I am about it. And I won the Rondo Award. You can see the little decal there for Best Audio Commentary. I did the full 3-hour audio commentary. I forgot to mention that in this magazine, I won Best Article of the Year for the Rondo Awards, which I'm very proud of. And anyway, I also interview Jane Seymour on camera, and I interview Leonard Whiting, who played Dr. Frankenstein, and he was Romeo in Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet, and was very well known back in those days, kind of a teen idol, actually. And also the co-screenwriter, Don Bacardi, who was the lover of Christopher Isherwood. The two of them wrote the screenplay to this incredible production. They were probably the most well-known gay couple back in the 70s, just totally iconic. Christopher Isherwood wrote the Berlin Stories that was the basis for the Cabaret, and Don Bacardi is a world-renowned portrait artist, and they just did a magnificent job writing this script. Now, this Frankenstein film, we're used to Frankenstein, the Frankenstein monster always looking really gnarly and grotesque. and everybody screaming and running at the very side of him. But they twisted it and decided, the doctor is not going to bring to life his Adam as some ugly creature. He's going to want to bring to life a beautiful creature. And so that's what they did. They not only made Dr. Frankenstein beautiful, I mean, they hired Leonard Whiting, known from Romeo and Juliet. He was only 22 years old at the time when he played Dr. Frankenstein, the youngest Dr. Frankenstein in history, except for maybe a couple of teen Frankenstein movies. And then when he brings the creature to life, it's played by Michael Sarrazin, and he comes out gorgeous and beautiful, and he calls him beautiful, and he is absolutely stunning. And so then what happens is that eventually he has to, the brain of the creature has amnesia, so he sort of has to teach him how to be presentable in high society. By the way, this is what he looks like when he first comes out. He's quite dishy, very, very nice. And but he teaches him etiquette and how to be presentable in high society, very much like Henry Higgins teaches Eliza Doolittle, the flower girl in My Fair Lady, Audrey Hepburn, how to be a lady and pass as a high society lady. And they very much, the writers talked about and told me very much they based it on that, actually. And it was inspired by Shaw's Pygmalion, and which was the play that My Fair Lady is based on, of course. And he even takes him on a date to the opera. I mean, can we get any more gay than that? Come on, people. I don't know how this went over the heads of people, but it apparently did. They sort of think it's a brotherly love, or it's a, father-son relationship. It's a completely gay. And when you look at it through that lens, it's pretty remarkable what they were able to get away with. Well, this whole obsession continued. And for the 50th anniversary, I decided I've got to get everything out of my system on this. And so I decided to write the most massive making of book in the history of making of books, I think. And it is this book. And it is 400 pages. And it also has a new cover by the same artist, Mark Maddox, which has a front and back, which is absolutely gorgeous. And it has 1,000. It's 400 color pages. Not every photo was available in color. There's a lot of black and white photos, but color whenever we had it. And there's just color in black and white and all kinds of beautiful artwork and everything laced all the way throughout this gorgeous book. And I was able to get Anne Rice, before she passed away, to write the foreword. It was the movie that inspired her to write Interview with the Vampire, which launched her entire career. And I also got Guillermo del Toro to write the afterword, which is so exciting because it's one of his favorite films. And he right now is making his own Frankenstein film that he is written, directing, and producing right now for Netflix. And it's been shooting ever since early this year with an all-star cast. Oscar Isaac plays Dr. Frankenstein, Jacob Elordi, the gorgeous, super tall hunk from Euphoria, and played Elvis and Priscilla, and he's like hotter than hot. I think, I don't know for sure, but I have a feeling that Guillermo might be borrowing the idea that the monster comes out attractive in the beginning before he starts to deteriorate. But that's what happens to him in Frankenstein, the True Story. Eventually the experiment goes awry, and his skin starts to deteriorate, and he does end up becoming rather unattractive and gnarly. And our Dr. Frankenstein, who is known in all the versions to abandon the creature, he does abandon him. And now it has a deeper meaning. It's like he loved him when he was beautiful, but now that he's not, he kind of lets him go. And the creature goes on a journey to find love. And it's the most moving and most wonderful film. I recommend it to everyone. And it really holds up. It's got the most amazing cast. Aside from Leonard Whiting and Michael Sarrazin, Jane Seymour plays the female creature. James Mason plays Dr. Polidori, who's an associate of Dr. Frankenstein. And James Mason's character was actually based on Dr. Pretorius from Bride of Frankenstein. And in fact, in early drafts of the screenplay, they called him Dr. Pretorius. And he is, just like in Bride of Frankenstein, he's the one who comes to Dr. Frankenstein and convinces him to create a female creature. And many, many, many parallels that obviously are very much Dr. Pretorius. They decided to change the name to Dr. Polidori. It's sort of a long story, but for those who might not know, the author of Frankenstein, Mary Shelley, who was just a teenage girl when she wrote this, she was vacationing with Lord Byron, her fiance, Percy Bysshe Shelley, and Dr. Polidori, who was the lover of Lord Byron and also his physician. He was quite young, actually. You know, you think of James Mason in this movie, he was rather old, but Dr. Polidori at that time was in his early 20s. And they challenged each other to write horror stories while they were vacationing in Lake Geneva in Switzerland. And Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein, and Dr. Polidori wrote Vampire, the very first vampire story or novella that had ever been written. I mean, we're talking many decades before Dracula, before all of the other ones that we know, like Carmilla and other vampire stories. This predates them all. And so it was a pretty remarkable little vacation challenge to write horror stories of what came out of that. And but Dr. Polidori, in real life, his nickname that Lord Byron would tease him with was Polly Dolly, which was rather emasculating, kind of making fun of what he probably was, maybe a little effeminate, perhaps, or at least Lord Byron was trying to poke fun at him of being that way and calling him Polly Dolly. Well, the screenwriters thought that was so funny that they wanted to use that as the nickname for Dr. Polidori and have it be this sort of emasculating nickname. And it gets used very liberally throughout the film. And when the monster, who has the brain of the David McCallum character, Dr. Clerval, who was a former well, let's just say he was a former lover of Dr. Polidori's character, sort of this sugar daddy relationship that blew up. And he is, now that the brain has come back, the amnesia is worn off, and he is sort of Dr. Clerval's brain coming through the monster. He very much wants revenge against Dr. Polidori. And on the ship, if you've seen it, you'll recall when the monster, is hoisting James Mason up the mast in this huge storm where he ends up getting struck by lightning. I'm sorry, spoilers, but I mean, the movie's 50 years old, people. He is saying, Polly Dolly, and all this great stuff. And it's just magnificent. It's really cool. But that's kind of one of the reasons why they changed the name from Pretorius to Dr. Polidori. But he's very much Dr. Pretorius, who was really one of the very first main gay characters in mainstream cinema. Ernest Thesiger played him in Bride of Frankenstein and was, very obviously a gay character. I mean, it's you can't get around it. Even the housekeeper Minnie, played by Una O'Connor, when she introduces him to Dr. Frankenstein, she comes in and says, "There's a very queer gentleman here to see you." And of course, okay, people will say, well, queer didn't mean that in 1935. You're wrong. In England, it did. And all of these actors were British. The director was British. the actor playing him, Ernest Thesiger, was British. Connor was from over there, I think Scottish maybe. Um, and they absolutely knew what they were, they were, that word was very loaded and they knew exactly what they were doing. So, yeah, it was, Praetorius yeah, he's my favorite gay character in the history of cinema. I think he's just so delicious. And in that movie, in Bride, he creates these little creatures that
Oh
he
yeah.
grows in petri jars. They're miniature and everything. And he shows the collection to Dr. Frankenstein, and he's just so delighted. And it's just also delicious. I love all of these Frankenstein films,
Mhm.
obviously. But Frankenstein, the True Story, also has, uh, well, they wanted for the landlady, they wanted Elsa Lanchester, who played the bride in Bride of Frankenstein, to play her, and she almost did, but
Oh,
she had a conflict with another film she was doing.
oh man, that would have
But
been
but
awesome.
they got a really good replacement. They got Agnes Moorehead, who was fantastic as the landlady, and of course we all know her as Endora on Bewitched and everything. But she was, this incredible actress who's been around since the late 1930s, and she was just brilliant. It also has um, Sir Ralph Richardson as the blind man with the fiddle. That is another character that was in Bride of Frankenstein, and also spoofed by Gene Hackman in Young Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And then Sir John Gielgud plays the chief of police, and we have, as I mentioned, David McCallum playing Dr. Cloval, Nicola Paget playing Elizabeth, the fiancée of Dr. Frankenstein, who Dr. Cloval, David McCallum, every time she comes over, he's like, get the fuck out of here. He doesn't want a woman near them. And, and it's just so obvious, that he's just like, he is in love with Dr. Frankenstein. He doesn't want her there. He feels she's an intruder, and she has to keep leaving their place. And it's pretty amusing when you look at it through that lens. And Tom Baker, who
Mhm.
very shortly after this went on to do Doctor Who as the captain of the ship. Anyway, it's just everywhere you turn, there's another famous face, and it's just this beautifully produced film. It was the most expensive television production
Oh
up to
wow.
that time, and the most expensive horror film up to that time until The Exorcist, which kind of blew budgets out of the water. But it was really lavishly produced at Pinewood Studios in England and on locations all around, including these amazing chalk cliffs and everything where the creature tries to commit suicide by jumping off the cliff, and
Mm.
um, just gorgeous stuff. The largest Dr. Frankenstein laboratory ever
Mhm.
created for any film, even now to this
Wow.
day. Um, just humongous set, and it's actually in that stage it became sort of known as the James Bond set, the stage and everything, um, because they would build those incredible massive James Bond sets in there. And I just love everything about it. I think it's just really, really touching. And the climax, I guess I won't give away the climax if you haven't seen it, but it's incredibly moving. Um, and it's a love story. And when the producer, Hunt Stromberg Jr., who is gay, and was gay when he was alive, and his dad was a huge producer at MGM, so he grew up in Hollywood in in movie studios. His dad produced the Thin Man movies. He won an Oscar for The Great Ziegfeld, which won Best Picture that year. He did The Women. I mean, all these really amazing classic films. And Hunt Stromberg Jr., when he was 11, well, actually, even when he was 9, his dad produced Mask of Fu Manchu, starring Boris Karloff, and it was not long. It was 1932, like just the very next year after Karloff's big breakthrough in the original Frankenstein. And there was all this electrical equipment in the Fu Manchu movie that was designed by Kenneth Strickfaden, who had done all the electrical equipment in the Frankenstein films. And so this 9-year-old kid eyes bugging out of his head, gets to know Karloff, who's a family friend now. He gets to know Kenneth Strickfaden and sees how he does all of his magic with these electrical equipment and stuff. And then a couple years later, in 1935, he gets to go visit his friends on the set of Bride of Frankenstein and visit Karloff and visit Kenneth Strickfaden. But also, he's gotten to know Elsa Lanchester, who's playing the bride, because at the very same time, she was going back and forth between Universal while they were shooting Bride of Frankenstein to MGM, where she was shooting a movie for his dad called Naughty Marietta.
Gotcha.
And so Elsa Lanchester was a family friend.
Mm,
Anyway, Hans Stromberg Jr. fell in love with those movies just like I did,
mm,
much later. And they were his absolute favorite films. And his dream in life was to do an epic Frankenstein film that would sort of combine the first movie and Bride of Frankenstein
mm,
into this big opus. And he was a giant fan of James Whale, the gay director of both of those films. And I actually co-executive produced a film called Gods and Monsters, in which Ian McKellen plays James Whale. And we actually had a flashback scene on the set of Bride of Frankenstein with Ian McKellen as James Whale directing a look-alike bride and everything. We recreated the laboratory, and we got some of that Kenneth Strickfaden equipment that was still around and actually had the real stuff. And it was also used by Mel Brooks in Young
mm,
Frankenstein. Um, so at any rate, this producer, Hans Stromberg Jr., when he grew up, he didn't get along great with his dad because of the gay thing. He didn't really want to be his second in command producing movies in Hollywood. So he went to New York and produced Broadway shows for a while and did quite well. But then in the 50s, he realized that television was the next big thing. And he immediately got himself a job in 1954 and came back to LA and got a job at KABC,
mm,
the local ABC affiliate here in Los Angeles. And he had gone to this big costume ball at Halloween the previous year in 1953 and had seen this girl who won a prize who looked like the sort of Morticia character from the Addams Family cartoons. At that
mm.
time, they hadn't named the character. They did only
Oh,
named
wow.
her Morticia when they did the series in the 60s. But
Mm.
you know what I mean when I say Morticia.
Yeah.
It's that goth woman from those early Charles Addams cartoons. And this girl who won the contest, her name was Mela Noorme, and he was like, I really like this. I'm going to keep her in mind. And 6 months later, he gets this job at KABC and he finds her and he creates a show called The Vampira Show. He writes it, produces it, gets her to, tweak the look a little bit and creates the very first horror host in all history and really creates the entire I don't know, genre or
Mm,
whatever you want to call it
yeah.
of horror hosts. And it was all him. He just and they went from the bottom of the ratings barrel to right to zoom to the top. This became this huge hit, and it's just a little local show, but it got coverage in Life magazine, all these national publications, TV Guide. She won. She was nominated, not won. She was nominated for an Emmy Award, and and then she started getting invited to come on to national, variety shows and stuff and do comedy sketches and everything. I mean, it was just this huge phenomenon. Well, that led to Hunt Stromberg Jr. He, within a year or two, got picked up by CBS and National and became head of programming for CBS, where he helped create and shepherd such shows as Alfred Hitchcock Presents, The Twilight Zone, The Munsters, Gilligan's Island. I mean, the list just goes on and on. Every iconic show you can possibly imagine. Oh, and by the way, he discovered Carol Burnett
Okay.
and Clint Eastwood. But we won't be name dropping. Anyway, he was just this remarkable guy. In 1962, one of the CBS shows that he was overseeing was Route 66, and he said, "I want to have a big Halloween special." So he cast Peter Lorre, uh, Lon Chaney Jr., his family friend Boris Karloff, and
Gosh.
convinced Boris Karloff to put on his Frankenstein monster makeup one last time because he had refused to do it forever.
Mhm.
And and it was this incredible TV special. It also had Martina Hunt, who had just been in the Hammer film Brides of Dracula. I mean, it was for horror kids back in that day. I mean, it was just like this amazing little TV special. And so anyway, long story longer, he finally became an independent producer and was able to do his Frankenstein film, Frankenstein, the True Story, for NBC in 1973. And that was just the kicker of his whole career. And but he was really ready to do something that was going to be mind-blowing and be something that he could be proud of as a gay man, to
Mhm.
have a lot of gay subtext in this. And that's why he hired the two gay writers, and a number of gay actors in the show, and other gay people behind the scenes. And as I say, they called themselves the Lavender Hill Mob, which I just find so funny. And it's just an amazing journey. And you'll read all about it in this book. The book is available on Amazon in hardback, paperback, ebook, and audiobook. And I got everybody who's still alive, and the interviews that I do in the book, they came and re-recorded their interviews for the audiobook, like Jane Seymour, et cetera. And then for the people who'd passed away, we had other actors fill in for them and do their voices. I got Juliette Mills. Unfortunately, Anne Rice had passed away, so Juliette Mills voices her forward. And Guillermo del Toro was directing his Frankenstein film over in Scotland, and so I got Doug Jones, who played the amphibian man in Guillermo's Shape of Water, and
Mhm.
he was in a bunch of other Guillermo films. He came in and reads his afterward on his behalf, which is really cool. So the audiobook is a great companion piece, but you need to see all the photos.
Mhm. Yeah, that's
Anyway.
so cool. That book, oh, just so gorgeous. Sam, I am so glad that you chose this movie to talk about because I'm learning so much. When I put it on last night, I was shocked to see the runtime of over 3 hours. And I was like, there's
Yes.
no way. So I didn't know going into it that it was originally released in two parts and as a series and not as one whole 3 hour show. I got through half of it because I wasn't expecting it to be 3 hours. And I am really, really enjoying it. And I'm going to save part two for tonight. And I honestly can't wait to continue it. I think it's beautifully shot. I think it's perfectly cast. I love all the different practical effects and the makeup and costuming. I really am enjoying this film. So I'm so glad that you picked this one and that you recommended it to me. I can't wait to continue it. Would you ever be interested in if someone said, "Hey, Sam, you want to remake this today?" Would you want to?
Wow, that would be very daunting to take on. I don't, unless I had, you know, unlimited resources and budget and everything else, I wouldn't want to, tamper with the beauty that's been done. Um, if there was some miracle and somebody was going to, give me a blank check, yeah, I mean, it would be the dream of a lifetime. But if I didn't have the resources, it would be hard. I mean, I think if I were to ever be able to do a Frankenstein film, it would have to be, some kind of smaller, a little kind of sliver of time or
Mm,
something of the story to keep it contained and not have to, have this epic kind of production value that it would have to have than the way this movie certainly did. Um, I'm so excited to see what Guillermo does with his
me too.
version. Oh my gosh. And there are other versions being made. There's a film called The Bride
Mhm.
with Christian Bale as the monster, and it's and Maggie Gyllenhaal is directing it, and they've already finished it, and I can't wait to see that as well. I mean, there's just lots of interesting stuff going on with the subject matter. Before I forget,
Mhm.
there's a warning. Anybody who wants to see this film, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you get the Blu-ray, which you can get on Amazon or directly from Shout Factory. Um, the If you have Amazon Prime, they are streaming a version of Frankenstein: The True Story, but it is not the complete version. The
Oh
complete version
no.
is 3 hours. The version they are streaming is 2 hours. So a third of the movie has been butchered from this film. It's hardly even comprehensible. And so many people unwittingly think they're watching the movie and they're
Wow.
not. So it's really, really frustrating that there's no that they're not running the whole thing.
Yeah.
I don't understand why they're not. It doesn't seem to make sense. What that 2 hour version is actually is the film was released theatrically in theaters in Europe and a few other countries back in the day. But it's just a terrible, terrible version, and it did very poorly in the cinemas and got bad reviews because it was so incomprehensible. And the producers disavowed it. Everybody disavowed it. They all hated it. Actors hated it, and but it's kind of lived on, unfortunately. When video cassettes first started happening, you couldn't fit a 3 hour movie on those, and so when it first got released on home video, it was this terrible 2 hour version. So a lot of people were introduced to it thinking this was it.
Wow.
Um, so just beware and
Mhm.
make sure watching the full 3 hour version. And the way to get it in its most beautiful form is this gorgeous Shout Factory version. Um, and if you're in England, it also came out there, this exact same package as this, from a company called Fabulous Films. It has a
Oh,
different cover artwork by another artist who's a friend of mine, Graham Humphreys, but it has all of my extras and the same 2K restoration that Shout Factory did. So
oh,
that's
awesome.
also the one to get if you're in Region B area. Um, but at any rate, yes, I'm glad you're watching and I'm glad you're enjoying it. And you'll probably, I highly recommend rewatching it with my audio commentary
Oh,
because
that'd
you'll
be great.
get a lot of other details out of it that you might not pick up on first
Mhm.
viewing. And there's even a couple of gaffes that I point out and things
Oh,
that are
cool.
that are funny. And um, so yeah, I'm just obviously very proud of it all. And by the way, I have to brag. As I said, I won the Rondo Award for Best Article for this. Then I got a Rondo Award for audio commentary for this. And this year, back in June, I picked up a third Rondo Award for Writer of the Year for this book, which I'm so proud of. So I have three Rondo Awards for my obsession with Frankenstein and
That's
True
awesome, though.
Story.
That's so,
It's an
you know,
embarrassment of riches. But I
what's
think
crazy?
I'm going to have to contact Webster's dictionary and see if I can get my picture put right next to the word obsession
Oh my
because
gosh.
I'm the best example of it.
It's so cool though that like you were so passionate about a film, right? And then you were able to get so involved, and now you have the zine, you have the book, you have the commentary, you have the all this stuff that you got to contribute to something that you were so passionate about, and now you're part of the legacy of this film. That's like so crazy and so awesome. It must feel so rewarding.
And incredibly narcissistic too. Yes,
Yes.
it's all about me, darling. And none of this would have happened without me. But in actual truth, um, the movie had kind of drifted into obscurity, and
Mm.
because the 2 hour version was the one that so many people had seen in
Yeah.
the early days of home video and things like that, they weren't getting a good impression of the film, and so its reputation at the time it came out was very big, and people and all of us monster kids who saw it at the time, it was like the talk of the water cooler at school for months, and it reran on NBC 1 year later, and everybody who was watching it who had missed it, all of us who had seen it before saw it again, but for whatever reason, for all of those reasons that I mentioned, it just fell into obscurity. And
Mm.
And I really do feel that between, the magazine and coming out and all these that led to the Blu-ray and now led to the book and everything, it really has started to be rediscovered in a much bigger way than ever before. And I'm very proud of that because I really feel like I have helped restore this film to its rightful place in cinema history, in
Oh.
movie history, in Frankenstein movie history,
Mhm.
because it really was kind of this forgotten gem.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That must feel so rewarding.
It is, and I'm certainly people like, oh, you've turned it into a cottage industry. Well, let's not go that far. I'm not getting rich off of any of this. With the amount of money I've spent to get all of these
Yeah,
things, I
that's
will
true.
never even hope to break even. So it
Hmm.
is truly a labor of love,
Yeah,
which makes these awards so incredibly meaningful because that's my reward of just being able to bring this to everyone's attention and sort
yeah,
of, have a renaissance for this film.
yeah. So, Sam, if you were given the blank check to remake this in 2024, have you ever thought about who you would cast in these roles?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can't go down that rabbit hole. It's too depressing because when I start thinking about that and then it doesn't happen, it's
Yeah.
soul crushing, I had so many passion projects over the years that I tried to get going that didn't happen and oh my Lord. Um yeah, it's hard. I mean, I'm just so excited with the cast that they're putting together for Guillermo's film.
Mhm.
And oh, by the way, uh anyone thinking that Guillermo is being faithful to the Mary Shelley novel, in spirit, yes. To the letter, not so much.
Mhm.
Why do I think that? Well, there's a character that he's included in his version of the film named Dr. Pretorius, which
Oh,
was only a character from Bride of Frankenstein, had nothing to do with the Mary Shelley book. And
interesting.
he's cast this guy he's sort of maybe you've heard of him, Christoph Waltz, the
Oh, I love
two-time
him.
Oscar winner. Oh my
Yeah,
God. I'm I'm just wetting my pants. It's going to
that's,
be
yeah,
amazing.
incredible.
And I'm sure that there's going to be, if I'm sure he's going to be a gay character, or at least there's going to be a subtext of him being gay. I mean, if there's not, I mean, it's a huge missed opportunity, but I think Guillermo's going to go there, and
Mm,
I hope so. And yeah, it's just going to be amazing. And Mia Goth is playing the
I love her.
bride. Um, and Charles Dance is in it. I mean, just I think Charles Dance. I could be wrong, but don't look on IMDb
Yeah,
under Guillermo and look at his
so
upcoming
cool.
projects. But they're deep into production. I mean, it's they may have actually just be finishing shooting because they've
Mm,
been shooting since January
yeah.
when Jacob Elordi was the host of Saturday Night Live in January. He literally was getting on a plane the next day to go shoot the movie.
That's crazy.
And everybody thought he was sick because he was so gaunt and
Mm,
thin. And he's like 6'5" or 6'6". He's, this giant. And he was very drawn and didn't look um, as robustly hot as he did in oh gosh, what was the film he just did
was it
this
Saltburn?
yeah, Saltburn.
Oh, I
Thank
love
you. God,
Saltburn.
the name of that movie went out of my head. He's the hottie in Saltburn
Yeah,
for
so
crying out
good.
loud. Anyway, but yeah, they were starting to shoot in January, and so here we are. We're taping this in September,
Mhm.
and but it was a huge budget thing, and I don't, but I think they're probably wrapping things up. I don't know for sure, but it's for Guillermo's been talking about a Frankenstein film for a couple of decades, and
Mhm.
so at a certain point you're like, well, is this film ever going to happen? This one is for sure happening.
I can't wait for it.
I know,
So,
me too.
with all of your love for this film, do you happen to own any memorabilia, any merch, or any props or anything from the film?
I don't have any props, but I do have copies. I have this various drafts of the screenplay that are original. I have a lot of paperwork. I've was able to. One of the assistant directors had kept a complete set of the call sheets, which were just absolutely invaluable. It tells you what scenes where they were shooting every day, where they were shooting, if it was locations, it has the address, it has, and it tells what actors are working that day and everything. So that was just incredibly invaluable in terms of writing a book on the making of, because you could chronologically go through and see how it sort of came together.
Yeah.
And it was just amazing. And I have hundreds of photos that I've collected over the years.
So
And
cool.
it just was very, very lucky. I became friends with Alex Smythe, who's the son of the late director of the film, Jack Smythe. And he had a big album of photos from behind the scenes. I also studied the papers of the producer, Hunt Stromberg Jr.,
Mm.
and they are housed, 25 boxes of them housed at the USC,
Oh,
University of
wow.
Southern California, in their Cinematic Arts Library.
Cool.
And I went through all of those papers, one paper at a time. Not all of it on Frankenstein, the True Story,
Mm.
obviously, but his whole career. I mean, there's stuff in there about all of these great things that I was telling you about, from Vampiro to Karloff to everything, and Elsa Lanchester. He used to sign his letters. Sorry, I have to sign off now. Elsa Lanchester has arrived to show me a new wart. I found that salutation on a whole bunch of different letters that he
That's
did.
hilarious.
Um, oh my God, he was the funniest guy. I
Mhm.
wish I had gotten to know him better. I did correspond with him back in the day,
Oh,
and I even pitched to him doing a book on Frankenstein, the True
oh,
Story, and
wow.
he was interested in me doing it. And when I was going through his archives, all of these papers at USC, I found my letter in there. And I
Wow.
not only found my letter, there were several letters that I found that I had sent to him, and he had three copies left of this in
Oh
his
my God.
archives. He had ordered 20 of them and had given them out to everybody, and kept three in his archive. And
That's
that made
incredible.
the hair on the back of my neck stood on end when I saw that stuff. I mean, it was
Wow.
just incredible.
That is so
Um,
cool.
but yeah, I just think he's the coolest guy, and such a trailblazer for, you know, the gay
Mm.
Hollywood, and the gay mafia, if we refer to it tongue in cheek. And he was just, he really, really, really was at the forefront of all of that, and had these amazing, important jobs, like being head of programming at CBS, where he was
Mm.
able to just do all sorts of amazing things. Um, so anyway, yeah, it's been quite a journey. And in the book, I there's a very long section toward the back that is a biography of
Oh,
Hunt Stromberg
nice.
Jr. In fact, I had thought for a while that I might do a book just on him,
Mm.
but it's so integrated into the Frankenstein, the True Story, and how everything leads up to it, and how in everything, I just felt like you can't really separate the two. And I don't think there's a market really for, maybe there's not a market for this,
Mhm.
but I don't think there's a market for a separate book just on the producer. And so I decided to kind of incorporate it and make it part of this giant tome, my coffin table book.
Ah, but that's so perfect. We are just weeks away from Halloween. We're getting so close. And I was wondering what your go-to Halloween candy is.
Oh gosh. Well, my my absolute favorite is almond M&Ms.
Oh, nice. No, those are good. Those are good. Those are rare because I feel like
They
you always
don't, I
get
know,
the
you go into stores and stuff, and they don't
the
always
peanut
carry
ones.
those, and
Yeah.
it's really annoying. They'll have the ones with peanuts, they'll
Hmm.
have the peanut
The
butter
regular
ones,
ones, the
all
Reese's.
these
Yeah.
different ones.
The
But
almond
the
ones are
almond
good.
ones are a little hard to find. Maybe they're more expensive to make, and they don't make as much of a
Oh, yeah.
profit off of those. I don't know. But but I love them. I love almonds and chocolate in any form together.
Yeah. And then one thing, I don't think I asked you this last time we spoke on here, but one of my favorite questions to ask guests is, do you have a favorite Halloween costume that you have ever dressed up as?
Oh gosh, I certainly do, and I will show
Is
it
there a
to you.
picture?
There is a picture right here, and I was 8 years old, and I wore a Frankenstein costume. And that is, I'm drawing a blank. It's a very famous costume maker, very kitsch, that everybody loves, and it's been reproduced in recent years. And but that is the original, from 1964 or whatever.
That is so
Can
cool.
you see it?
Yeah, I love it. I have asked this question to so many guests, and you're the first one to be able to show a picture. That's so cool.
No, I was so glad to find a picture of it, and in fact, God, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on the costume maker, but people who are into that, they'll know
Yeah, they'll
exactly
know.
who it is.
Yeah.
Um, they just put out a little figure, a figure of a kid dressed in that costume,
Aw,
and I bought one. It's the cutest thing.
that's so cool.
Really wild. So I mean, it is quite famous, in the world of horror, Halloween costume, whatever. It was very iconic back in the day.
Oh, very cool. Well, when people are done with the 3-hour watch of Frankenstein, the true story, what other horror movies would you recommend for them to watch this Halloween season?
Well, Bride of Frankenstein is a
Mhm.
must. That's I mean, really, truly, that's probably my favorite film of all time. I'm a little more obsessed with the details of the behind the scenes of Frankenstein, the true story,
Mhm.
obviously. Um, but any of the Frankenstein films, especially the early ones, the first two directed by James Whale, I just find absolutely brilliant. And but the third one, Son of Frankenstein, is quite wonderful, and it still has Karloff as the
Mhm.
monster, and it has Bela Lugosi playing Igor.
Oh,
And
yeah.
most people, when they think of Bela Lugosi, they think of Dracula,
Mhm.
and he's fantastic as Dracula. Don't get me wrong, but he is fucking brilliant as Igor. And he played Igor not only in Son of Frankenstein, but then the fourth one in Ghost of Frankenstein, where Lon Chaney Jr. takes over playing the monster for that one. And he's just it's a wonderful, juicy character that Lugosi really got to sink his teeth into, and it has more to do, and just it's I find it more interesting. His Dracula is just very sort of one note, very solemn, and it's more of a presence than a big um you know giving him juicy lines and
Mhm.
different things to do in the way that Igor has. And so I just find that an incredible part for Lugosi. um and I love I'm a huge Vincent Price fan,
Mhm.
so there's always Pit and the Pendulum, which
Yeah.
was another seminal favorite from my childhood. That was like probably the first horror film that I remember seeing at the age of 5 at my dad's theater in first run in 1961. My older sisters had taken me there; they were babysitting me, and that completely blew me away. And full circle, I get to direct Elvira's Haunted Hills with its own pit and
Ah,
pendulum sequence and everything. So that was a dream come true for sure. And I love all of Vincent Price's films, and the Edgar Allan Poe ones, obviously, House of Usher, Pit and the
yeah.
Pendulum, Haunted Palace, Mask of the Red Death, Tomb of Ligeia, you name it, I love them. But then he did the two Dr. Phibes movies, which
Yeah.
are fabulous, and Theater of Blood. All of those
Oh,
are great for Halloween. Um, and yeah, so, and then of course Elvira's Haunted Hills. That's gotta
one of
have
the
that.
best. One of the best. You know, the way that you're obsessed with Frankenstein, the true story, I will start doing all my research and reaching out and doing interviews for how many years has it been since Elvira's Haunted Hills?
Well, A Virus on Hills came out in 2001. We shot it in 2000, so it's been 24 years since we made it.
Wow. Okay, for the 25th anniversary. There we go. We can
Yes,
put
next
together
year.
something. Wow, that's coming up fast.
Yeah,
Wow, wow, wow. We gotta figure out some kind of celebration. 25 years is a big milestone, so
yeah, it is. I mean, I guess if they do it on the 25 for the year it came out, which was 2001, so I guess it would be 2026.
mhm.
So not next year, but the year after. But
All right.
I mean, generally all in that area. Yes,
Yeah.
it's very exciting. But we for the 20, I guess the 20th anniversary, we did this incredible
Mhm.
restoration release through Shout Factory,
Yep.
that is just incredible and has a billion extras on it. And I helped write and direct a little 5-minute introduction just for that 20th anniversary with Cassandra as Elvira doing a 5-minute sort of silly intro.
I love
And
it.
and it's one of the last times that she's been in costume.
Mhm.
She only did it a handful of very small handful of times after that,
Yeah.
which she sort of retired doing, getting into her Elvira drag, as I call
Yeah.
it.
Oh man. But yeah, I love that 4K restoration from Shout Factory. I have it right here in my desk in the drawer because I
Yep.
keep it safe. It's like
It's
one of my
an
favorite.
amazing, amazing package, and I'm really, really proud of that. And it comes
Yeah.
in a slip cover. They did
Mhm.
just a beautiful
So
job.
gorgeous. Yeah, the colors and everything. But Sam, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to join me for my favorite horror movie. I am so glad that you picked this movie because I learned so much. Like I had all these questions in the back of my mind, and I feel like you answered all of them, and I learned so much about this. So now when I go and continue my watch through of it, I'll know all this stuff, and then eventually I would love to watch it again with your commentary and like just learn all these behind the scene details. So thank you so much, Sam, for joining me for this.
My pleasure. Anytime, my friend.
Oh, thank
Thank
you. I
you.
appreciate you so much. And where can people follow you to keep up with all your other upcoming projects and releases?
Follow me on Facebook, just Sam Irvin. Um, I usually am right at the cusp of 5,000 followers, so I always have to go in and anybody who's deactivated and make room for, newbies. But you can, if my friends list is filled up, just follow me there. I'm also on Instagram. However, I do sometimes tell long stories. I know it's hard to imagine, um, but it's sort of unlimited how long the text of a post is on Facebook, whereas on Instagram they
Mm,
have a limit, and I am constantly having to edit down the version that I put on Instagram. So if
mhm.
you really want the full treatment, you got to follow me on Facebook.
Perfect, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Sam. And I hope you have a very happy Halloween. And I can't wait to see you again in person very soon.
Yes, for sure.
All right. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.